What wisdom about parenting can you give from your own experience and from your writing?
Yeah, well, oh my God, there's a lot to say. So, on the bittersweet side of things, the wisdom that I would give is that, especially for kids who are growing up in relative comfort with everything going pretty well, um, they get the idea that real life is when things are going well. And when things don't go well, it's like a detour from the main road,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to understanding that it's all the main road. And I tell this story in the book of this time that we went on this family vacation where we rented a house in the countryside, and the house was next to this field where lived two donkeys that our kids fell in love with, and they were like really little at the time, two boys, and they're spending all this time feeding carrots to the donkeys, and it's all beautiful. And then comes the day where they realize that we're leaving in like 2 days and they're never going to see these donkeys again.
Mm-hmm.
And they start crying themselves to sleep. And the usual things that parents might say at a moment like that, of like, maybe we'll come back or another family will feed them, we'll feed these donkeys. None of that made any difference. But when we said to them, goodbye is part of life, and this this feeling you're having, everybody has it. You've had it before. You're going to have it again. You'll feel better in a couple days. But this is the way it's supposed to be. This is natural. That's when they stopped crying, because I think that's when they stopped resisting.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to feel the pain of goodbye, and it's another thing to be feeling like this isn't supposed to be happening. It's the resistance part of this isn't supposed to be happening that makes life really difficult.
Yeah.
As opposed to a more clear-eyed view of what it really is.
This is indeed supposed to be happening. There's a show called Yellowstone that I recently started watching.
Yeah, no, I've heard of it. We actually started watching it, but only a few minutes and didn't get into it.
So there's just a quick, it's not a spoiler of any kind, but there's a father taking out the son for the first time to go hunting and to shoot their first buck. And the son is get really sad because he pulls the trigger and he took a life. And the father says that everybody gets killed in this life. That's the way of nature. That's the way each one of us is going to get killed. And it's interesting because I didn't really think of it that way, because you think you die, but he really framed it as killed.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, there's no such thing as dying of old age. Let's discuss that a bit. But basically, there's something, whether it's a truck or a bacteria, something is going to kill you in the end. And that was an interesting way to look at it, because we tend to think of humans aren't supposed to be killed. We think of murder as one of the sins, sort of one of the things that's you don't do in society. But you know what? We do. That's a more technical discussion of whether we ultimately get killed by something in the end. But to some degree, that's true, at least for most of us, that there's something that gets us, whether it's cancer, those kinds of things. It's interesting. But yeah, it's that reframing of it's supposed to be, this is the way of the world.
Yeah. Though it's funny. I mean, at the same time that I just wrote a whole book about the fact that this is the way it is, like, I really do believe this is the way it is. And with this reality, there's an intense beauty that comes along with it. So we have to accept the reality to get to the beauty. I believe that. And at the same time, there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, but give me the magic wand to make the world different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much of this is a female thing too. Like, I was watching with my son, my 12-year-old, the other day. We were watching this show about the Battle of Thermopylae. And
yeah.
And it was like all about, valor and glory on the battlefield. And I said to him something like, gosh, don't you just wish we lived in a world where you didn't have to do all this in order for everyone just to live their lives? And he just looked at me completely puzzled. He's like, no, like, to him, it all just seemed self-evident that the world would be structured that way. And he had like the 12-year-old like admiration for the valor of it all.
But you wonder if that's nature or nurture. I wonder what that world looks like. We do live in a world where murder is seen as bad, but you look at a lot of the human history. I don't know if they had the same kind of conception of that. In terms of you have to ask what kind of murder, for what purpose. War was a way of life. Um, it's interesting. It's interesting if we can imagine properly a future that is different than ours in terms of operating under different moral systems. But I'd like, same with living indefinitely or living in a society with no war. Like how fundamental is war? How fundamental is death
I
to
mean, I think it's
humanity?
so fundamental to our source code. I just wish that our source code were different, basically.
Well,
Like I can't
there's
I
people
can't get
working on
past that
that, right?
wish.
There's brain computer interfaces that try to merge. So greater and greater. We have smartphones. We're already kind of cyborgs, but greater and greater merger of computational power.
Mm-hmm.
So literally adding source code to our original source code, just in a different. There's the mushy biology that runs source code, and then there's more cold electrical systems, and then they integrate together, and potentially one day we offload the magic that is human consciousness also into the machine, and then we'll get to see. Maybe they'll be a little bit less assholish about the whole war thing. That'd be more. But there is, I think, even when I think about engineering human intelligence or superhuman intelligence systems, I feel like they also need to have the yin and yang of life. They have to be able to be afraid and to be sad and all those kinds of things. But maybe it's because I'm a product of this particular environment. Maybe sadness is a useful human invention, but not a universal one.
This is what I don't know, because this is where I come back to as I told you, like the original reason that I wrote my whole book was the feeling that somehow in the expression of sad music is what other people see when they talk about God. Like
Yeah.
there's like an ultimate beauty there
Yeah.
that I don't know if we have access to without that, but maybe we do. But I can say in this world, it's a great way to get access to that state.
Is it within the reach of science to deeply understand this, you think? To understand that why you feel sad when you're listening to a song?
Or why you feel so much
Oh,
love when you're listening to a sad song.
to a sad song, right?
Yeah.
Why the sad song opens up some kind of deep connection to something you can call divine or something, whatever the heck that is.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, we have like really early signs of it from the research, and I'm sure we're just at the
Yeah.
scratching the surface stage. But I mean, like we know, for example, that the vagus nerve, which is so fundamental that it governs our breathing and our digestion, that our vagus nerve also activates when we see another being in distress. There's like an instinctive impulse to want to make it stop. Um, and the theory is that that's an evolutionary design because we had to be able to respond to the cries of our infants, and from that ability grows the greater ability to respond to other people's cries too. So that's probably just, like the very first step in being able to understand what all that is.